Hello friends, welcome back to Spiritism for All, and today we continue to study the book Behind the Scenes of Obsession, the chapter Valuable Elucidations. Spiritual author is Manoel Philomeno de Miranda, and the medium is Divaldo Pereira Franco. In this chapter, we'll see the continuing orientations and discussions with the obsessor Guilherme, where the help team, the obsession team, will learn important informations from Guilherme about the obsession method and about his mentor, Dr. Theophrastus. So let's proceed. Guilherme asleep had been transferred to an appropriate place on earth itself in order to await in spiritual renewal the new meeting with his former companions for the blessings of peace and consequently the obsession of Mr. Mateus and Mariana. The lucid mentor explained that another interview would occur with the Soares family stalker so that clarifications could be gathered to enable first aid operations with the success we all wanted. He also suggested that we should rest before facing the scheduled tasks. We should seek the serenity of prayer so that we could cooperate more firmly and with better understanding of the problems that affect the progress of the spiritual evolution of beings. However, he knew that when we returned to our bodies, we probably wouldn't remember his orientations with the clarity that would be desired. Before the usual time, we gathered at the headquarters of the Spiritist Union of Bahia in the space destined to the mediumistic labors, and surely inspired by Saturnino, Brother Petitinga took from the Gospel according to Spiritism, one of the Kardec's codified books, starting the reading of the moving page about the epigraph, Love your neighbor as yourself, as found in chapter 11. The words vibrating in the tone of compassion reached our souls as a message of love that united us all in perfect spiritual communion. Soon after, the meeting began. Incorporating the medium Moraes, medium Moraes is a psychophonic medium, Saturnino elucidated that he would bring Guilherme, who is the obsessor, to psychophony to better immerse himself in the psychic's fluids in order to reduce his psychic charge and his involvement in the bands of hatred that he had seen himself possessed for so many years. Silenced the voice of the friendly instructor, the medium was overcome by distressing stertorous breathing, and, as if waking up from a heavy sleep in which the images evoked very painful scenes, the afflicted pursuer identified the room in which he was and, seized by sudden anger, put up to rant. Calmed with magnetic blesses applied by the benefactor, he slowly regained his balance and asked the reason for the embarrassment of being there again. Very calmly, Petitinga explained him the need for their conversation for his benefit, clarifying the urgent need to turn to a more thoughtful examination of the problems that plagued him, explaining that only love has the power to achieve liberation. Guilherme clarified the need he nurtured to incarnate in order to continue the insidious demand, compensating for the injustice he believed he was victim. He elucidated that in one of the last meetings in the amphitheater, Dr. Theophrastus had presented his case to the crowd, which was deliriously acclaimed him, exalting the ethics of justice with their own hands, seeming in him the victory of the commitments that took place there. How could he retreat now? How could he retreat now? The entity showed the signs of despair and frustration of the capricious child who is caught in a lure of frivolity by the thoughtful observation of his parents. We don't know what amphitheater are you referring to, the evangelizer began with skill and delicacy. What could have happened in the amphitheater that brought him responsibilities, especially when it came to the unspeakable practice of a cowardly crime? Crime, retaliated Guilherme, visibly upset. Does the stubble of justice, which burns and hurts in the hands of the law enforcer, becomes, in your booklet, a crime? And the nefarious suicide to which I was driven by desertion from home, the infamous adultery practiced by whose to whom you call the victims? You forget my pains and the instructor interrupted him with great mental dexterity. Pichitinga replied, at that time semi-incorporated by Saturnino, who supported his right hand in the coronary center, irrigating his pineal gland with high doses of positive energy. Let us explain something here. The coronary center is one of the chakras that all of us have in the top of the head. And sometimes the communicating spirit, the benefactor, can use his hands to provide a healing bless, transferring energy to support the medium. That was what Saturnino did with Petitinga. So proceeding. Let's not go back to examining the reasons for the suffering that macerates you, he said gently. We are not unaware that there are sovereign laws that are in charge of finding the debtor wherever he is. To do so, however, it's not necessary for the new debtors or offenders to appear, thus creating a circle of regrettable additions. If you don't forgive, you make an aggression to the previous aggressor, so it's a circle that never ends. That's why forgiveness is so important. And the divine law doesn't need any obsessors to be avengers. It's not needed. The divine law, the divine justice will find the debtors wherever they are. But divine justice is born in the sublime sources of love and manifests itself through means of mercy. Under the protection of the noble instructor, the entire brain of the incarnate became radiant to clairvoyance, giving the impression that the blood carried a powerful luminous substance to impregnate itself with soft colors that flooded him from the inside out. The author is describing the scene that he, as a spirit, was seeing. And continuing the conversation, he added, "Which amphitheater does Brother Guilherme refer to?" He answered, "I'm referring to the stronghold where we met to learn lessons with Dr. Theophrastus." And stimulated to give broader details, the entity externalizing a hitherto undisclosed satisfaction elucidated. "Your surprise surprises me. Do you believe we are here unarmed? Truly powerful technicians are organized in the service of the discipline, alongside the fugitives who hide in the body of flesh on earth. It is interesting to observe how the realities of this side are ignored, even by those who venture to tour beyond the walls of the body." So the instructor answered, "Since we are so ignorant," said Petitinga, "we would beg you to enlighten us better." Puffed up, the Suarez family stalker replied, "Well, as I narrated before, when in my bitterness I asked Dr. Theophrastus for his safe interference, to which I was not denied. Gradually I became aware of his rich possibilities, including the amphitheater spectacle, which he promotes weekly for those who walk free of their bodies, but handicapped to ignorance, but knowing how to fight back the evil they received from their enemies, who have not yet conquered the tomb barriers." So, invited by friends on a Thursday, in the first few minutes after 0 o'clock, I rushed the place, which was full of people from both sides, incarnate and discarnate, to hear and learn from their master his precious lessons. Later, taking as an example, my case was publicly narrated, and after presenting the central lines of justice that I have to carry out, I was acclaimed, and in the last week I bid farewell. I received compliments from the boss and the promise of his constant help during the long years away from the group, while my dive lasted. The dive in the flesh. He's talking about incarnation. He fed me the satisfaction that, although separated by the body, I will be regularly taken there, maintaining ties with the organization so as not to remain helpless. So see, the obsessor is happy because the master obsessor said that despite he would incarnate during the dream, the asleep time, he would be taken back to the organization so as he could maintain all the links to his friends, false friends, of course. And after an expressive pause, he asserted, "As you can see, in addition to my personal case, I now carry the responsibility of acting on behalf of our group, who see in me one of the representations of the vigilantes and defenders of the truth. We were appalled. How could the testimony of an active member of the organization not be legitimate? There was no doubt, yes, I thought. However, how to understand an amphitheater in the mode of those on earth functioning beyond the grave? There was logic, however. Is not the physical world the representative of effects? He is trying to say us that, to explain us that the amphitheater in the other side of life, the spiritual side, where gathers incarnate in astral projection and discarnate ones to see shows, to learn, to receive orientations from obsessors is something very interesting to know, isn't it? Because sometimes we forget that our material world is just an image, a material image, a material, how could I say, representation of the real life, which is the spiritual side of life, where they have buildings, cars, lives, organs in their perispirits, and we forget that. So, as much as there is on our side, obviously there is on their side. How many lessons, however, beloved God, are waiting for us? The pray and watch, always commanding our destinies. With his usual serenity, Pichitinga was not a surprise. Rather, he referred to Jesus, who had preferred the cheering of the masses to the collusion with crime and the discrimination of temporal power. His greatness was his supreme humility, and his response to all evil was his total donation to the persecutors and breakaways, with arms outstretched on the cross, as if transformed into wings of love, waiting for all humanity, to support the unfortunate and fugitives from duty, renewing their hopes and sustaining them in the struggle, loving and strong till the end. The concepts emitted in the purest emotionally seemed to sensitize the communicator, who suddenly seemed afflicted, wanting to free himself from the bonds of psychophony, which was answered by Petitinga and Saturnino, who applied on him balsamic energy blesses, making him fall asleep. The work proceeded as usual, the spiritual work, until the closing time, when the instructor, returning to the psychophony, explained that during the night the group would meet again, during the body sleep time, to continue the tasks. Now, I'll tell again. It's very common that after the obsession meeting in a Spiritist center, when the mediums get back home and rest and go asleep, to be unfolded or taken from the body during sleep time an astral projection and returned to the Spiritist center, the spiritual side of the Spiritist center, where they can proceed in a disobsession meeting. The charity blessings and the treasures arising from fraternal communion are known only to those who exercise solidarity. We all demanded home with our spirits soothed by comforting hopes. Although the members of the Spiritist family had not participated in the night's work, a large part of the task had been carried out with the objective of their health and peace. As planned, we met again in the humble spiritual help room. Those who participated in the assistance to Brother Guilherme, led by Saturnino and his assistants. Although a considerable part of those consisted of incarnates partially detached by sleep, a very expressive spiritual lucidity was registered in all, which facilitated the work of the benefactors. Guilherme, anesthetized by hypnotic sleep, had been brought earlier, and in the same room he was being assisted by 2 nurses from the greater sphere, laying unconscious, veiled together by the affection that was indispensable to him to appease the disconnected forces of anger and disappointment that hammered him, a rebellious and unhappy spirit. After applying magnetic awakening resources to all those partially released by physical sleep for better lucidity, relative lucidity that the incarnates should be possessed for the tasks in the program, as explained by the instructor. And when we all found ourselves with better possibilities of recording in the spiritual centers, recording the lessons of that night, Saturnino elucidated that on that occasion an incursion into the domains of Dr. Theophrastus had been planned in order to collect secure information regarding the process of the obsession of the members of the Spiritist family, and more particularly of Mariana. Explaining the imperative of balance and maintenance of the state of prayer, equivalent to vigilance and faith, he informed that only he, Ambrosio, Guilherme, Brother Glaucus, whom we already knew from the time of the message about hypnotism, which had touched us so much, Petitinga and I would follow the observations in the amphitheater, while the other spiritual assistants and the medium Morais would linger there in evangelical reading and prayer, thus contributing to the desired results. Guilherme, awakened and clarified about the program in question, could not avoid an expression of horror. How dare they enter the chief's stronghold? What goals will you keep in mind? He inquired, haunted. Are you unaware that the show will have the personal direction of Dr. Theophrastus, who is invariably accompanied by more than 20 co-workers and personal guards? This recklessness could result in regrettable punishment for everyone, including me. No one intends to carry out an idea as crazy as this one. I absolutely refuse to to a kiss, to agree. You, however, my friend, replied Saturnino, are not in a position of choice. The hypnological forces applied there are not unknown to us. We have extensive experience in the matter, and we will be accompanied by a technician in such resources as an efficient cooperator for every less happy circumstances. Furthermore, we are at the service of Jesus Christ, the Supreme Lord of the earth, and no power is superior to the forces He grants us for the practice of good and the liberation of consciences still immersed in the shadows of crime. After a necessary pause, in which Guilherme struggled between the memories of thoughts that were usual for him and the noble austerity of Saturnino, who, although loving, knew how to handle the issue with an energy that did not allow for discussion, he continued, as we have already informed you, our desire is to help you find the guideline of inner peace. I refuse it, he cried angrily. I feel perfectly happy, and the consummation of my plans is the crowning achievement of all my efforts and sufferings. This unpleasant and coercive imposition surprises and infuriates me. Do not count on me. As if waiting the explosion of the revolt, Saturnino approached the revel and, praying in silence, was transfiguring himself before all of us, while an aura of suffering and profuse brightness enveloped him. Sublime vibrations dominated us all. We had the impression that the modest redoubt was transformed into an enclosure of light. Soft music came from afar, and surprisingly, we became to see, in addition to the material walls, several spiritual entities that participated in the tasks. Although we, the incarnates, did not know, immersed in deep prayer, helping Saturnino, who appeared to us, now a venerable ancestral figure, resurrected from the moving pages of the good news, the messages of Jesus, in his first centuries on earth, when fervent men let themselves be overcome by wild beasts, in unforgettable testimonies of love for Jesus. Tears swarmed us in abundance, and unknown emotions sweetly won was over. The messenger of life paternally involved Guilherme, transmitting him the gentle resources of comfort and hope, and spoke to him with an inimitable tone of voice. My son, Jesus is life, and life is an inevitable path for all of us, travelers of evolution. No one will indefinitely shy away from the progress, love, and happiness that are reserved for all of us. There is only sovereign in the universe, the law of love, that governs the worlds and commands all existing manifestations, because our Father is love. The hatred that embraces ourselves when helpless we fall into rebellion, hatred always transitory, results from the absence of love, that we numbs and poison with the mephitic emanations of our imbalance. Do not be afraid, therefore, to love. Love offers happiness to those who love, producing transcendent emotions in the spirit that ennoble and vitalize it. While hate disintegrates, macerates, and drives mad, love sublimates and liberates. Those who disrespect the laws of harmony suffer the consequences, and instead of becoming the ones who carries out the divine law, we turn to be just as criminals as the ones who we intend to punish. And no one will enjoy peace or experience joy victimized in himself by hatred. There are those who, in the voluptuousness of imbalance, say they don't care about their own state. However, the reality is different. We were created by God. We all have the destination of the divine light. He silenced momentarily to allow Guilherme to impregnate himself with the subtle vibrations, letting himself be penetrated by the arguments and by the love that radiated from him. Continuing, he added, "Forget, son, all evil, to remember the infinite good with which our Father blesses the hours. Evil only harms those who do it, making them bad. The forgiveness that is given in the seed of mercy that we sow towards the future for our own benefit. Don't recalcitrate. Don't delay the opportunity of renewal. Life awaits us, all with the benign or severe action with which we conduct ourselves in relation to our neighbors, to our brothers. Truly unhappy is the one who does not forgive, who does not forget evil, who does not offer an opportunity for redemption. All persecuted rescues and frees himself. All persecuted rescues and frees himself, while the executioner binds himself to the debt and lets himself be dragged to the vigorous suffering experiences, defeated later by the viruses he feeds in the hidden corners of the tormented mind. Remember in this way Jesus, who carried no guilty and yet, while he was talking, Mariana's former obsessor, overcome by sudden emotionality, burst into copious tears, in which all the anguish retained for long decades poured out, causing compassion to all of us who accompanied the rescue work, valuing the incomparable power of love. Huddled in Saturnino's generous arms, he looked like a very grown-up child, but absolutely vulnerable. Having seized the anger, which is a cruel executioner, the spirit had allowed himself to relax, returning to his own condition. "Cry, son," said Saturnino, equally moved. "The tears of righteous repentance and necessary pain are like precious rain on parched earth, offering the opportunity for the seeds of hope and peace to grow, which have suffered, until now, crushed in the barrenness of the soil. However, do not allow the renewing weeping to turn into howling and destructive storm." Let us put an observation here. Sometimes the translation from Portuguese to English, the pronoun related to the spirit, in English you put it, but we can't put it relating to the spirit because the spirit is the real us. Our body is just a dress of the spirit. So, when you talk about spirit, you talk about him or her, but not it. It's for things, and the spirit is not a thing. You are the spirit. Your body is not you. Your body is just a dress. Okay, that's why you translate spirits as him, not it. Now, new life begins for you, for all of us. Jesus is always the door, the new opportunity. Let us cross the rivers of the passions that hold us back, and let us advance towards the promising future. If the past appears to us as a ghost that makes peace impossible for us, the future, through the use of the present, with wisdom and nobility, give us the blessing of joy and the gift of peace. We all find ourselves ensnared in painful reminiscence. Our yesterday is like a shadow waiting for the sun of today, for the perennial clarity of tomorrow. That's a great teaching. Great teaching. Silencing momentarily, the spiritual benefactor seemed to recall distant memories. And seized by a sublime modulation that seemed to originate in distant places, he continued. In front of the unfortunates, the Master never had harsh words. He did not reproach them, nor provoke them. He involved them all in the caressing hope of better hours, offering them the gift of work, in the opportunities of 1,000 new beginnings for intimate refinement. However, before those who took pleasure in the misery of others, pseudo-dominators of the ephemeral world, he applied the corrective of the severe word, warning them with singular austerity, not sparing them the weight of the responsibilities they preferred. Rare ones, however, have known how to value the very essence of the Christian information. The evangelical directive even today seems madness to many, as the Apostle Paul informed in his time. Everything speaks to us about love, from the happy landscapes of nature to the superior emotions of life, from primitive sensations in inferior beings to expressions of happiness in man. However, love for many of us is nothing but complete selfishness, in which we asphyxiate the hopes of others in the narrow and tight nets of our unhappy personalism. He glanced around the room, brightened strongly by the glares radiating from him, while Guilherme, who sought to assimilate the lessons with an expression of understandable surprise and anxiety, transformed himself into a new man, abandoning the suffering carcass of the old man, imbued with hatred, now renewed by successive vibrations of love. And as if he wanted to fix the concepts emitted there in all of us, the benefactor continued lucid. We are born, we live in the body, and we lose our clothes, return to the stage of the same struggles countless times, without being able to improve our spiritual conditions, repeating the enslaving wheel of passions in which we delight. Many, in countless numbers, enter the flesh and leave it without noticing the phenomenon, clung to the most primal vibrations of life. We all dream of heaven, yes. Rare of us, however, are building the wings of evolution with the materials of intimate illumination, following the strict lines of fraternal work, renunciation, charity, and forgiveness. We sow little light and reap harmful afflictions. For this reason, our ark of hope remains empty of good spirit. Let us be prudent, therefore, using the resources of the present time to our benefit. Truly happy are those who forgive, who give in, who give, giving themselves to. Jesus is still and always our living lesson, our perennial example. Let us seek him. So he silenced, invaded by transcendent emotions. We had the impression of finding ourselves on another vibratory plane, other than the earth, our mistreated mother and place of so much distress. Recomposing himself with these usual characteristics, he said to Guilherme, who was looking at him somewhat dumbfounded, "And now, son, are you willing to follow us to the room of experiences of Brother Theophrastus?" "Yes," he answered. I'm afraid, though. In all my misery I dreamed, not infrequently, of distant peace." Tears stopped him from going on. Putting his right hand, the benefactor's hand, on his head, bathed with damp sweat, Saturnino encouraged him. "This is your moment of release. Don't put it off. The Lord will help us. Let's go." Next chapter, in the amphitheater. Thank you very much for watching us. If you like this video, please leave us a like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and leave us your comments. Thank you very much.